Okay, so as promised, carrying on with Unit 10, Lesson 1, looking at some crazy or not so pretty square root equations. So Unit 10, Lesson 1 continued. And again, we're looking at the square root equations. And so we're just going to jump right in and look at our first crazy example. So let's say we have the square root of x minus 1 equals x minus 7. So the first thing I want to check and be sure is that my square root, I only have one of them, and it's chilling all by itself. So I can go ahead and square things. But look at what I have on the right hand side. Be careful when I square, I'm squaring the whole side. So what does that look like? I'm going to square the left, and I'm going to square the whole right side. So we're going to end up having to do FOIL on this. So square and square root cancel out. I get x minus 1 equals, and you square this out, or if you remember the pattern back from Unit 8, I believe, whenever we were completing the square. I'm going to do this quick, but if you have questions, then email me or go back and look at that lesson. So we're going to get x squared minus 14x plus 49. And now I still want to solve this. This should look very familiar to what we had in Unit 9, solving our quadratic and linear systems. In order to solve this, I got to have all the same stuff, or all of everything, all of my terms, on one side of the equal sign. It doesn't matter what side, as long as I got 0 on the other side. So I'm going to move all of this stuff on the left over to the right. So how am I going to do that? I need to subtract x. So I will subtract x. And I need to add 1. And then I will add 1, right? What we do to the left, we always do to the right every time when we're solving equations. So I'm going to check on the left that my stuff does cancel out. X minus x, definitely 0. I'm good there. Negative 1 plus 1, definitely 0. I'm good there. So 0 equals my x squared just comes down. Negative 14 minus 1 gives me negative 15x. And then 49 plus 1 gives me positive 50. Alright, so now this is just a quadratic. We have several different ways that we can solve them. This one actually ends up factoring. I don't have a number in front of x squared. So all I'm looking at are the numbers that multiply together to give me 50. And when I add them together, I get negative 15. In order to get a negative, I have to have negatives. So I know both of my factors will be negative. So what do I multiply together that gives me positive 50? I'm not going to list them all, but in this case, negative 5 and negative 10, if you think about it, negative 5 times negative 10 definitely give me positive 50. And then negative 5 plus negative 10 give me negative 15. So I end up my factors, x minus 5 and x minus 10 equals 0. And so we know how to solve that. Set them both equal to 0. X minus 5 equals 0. X minus 10 equals 0. So I get x equals 5 and x equals 10. And so I end up with two solutions, but are they legit solutions? We need to check to see if one of them may be an extraneous solution, or both of them. We could not actually have any solutions at all. So we want to check for extraneous solutions. Check for extraneous solutions, my shorthand here. And the way that we do that, we just plug them back into our original equation and see if I get a true statement. So I'll start by plugging in x equals 5. So plug in x equals 5 to my original equation. And so I had the square root. In this case, x will be 5, so 5 minus 1 equals 5 minus 7. So I get the square root of 4 equals 5 minus 7 is negative 2. And the square root of 4 we know is positive 2. 2 equals negative 2. That is not true. So we found our first imposter. So x equals 5 is bad. He lied. He's actually not one of our solutions. So let's check and see if 10 is being honest with us. So we're going to do the same thing and plug in x equals 10 to our original equation. So I'm going to have the square root of 10 minus 1 equals 10 minus 7. So I get the square root of 9 equals 10 minus 7 is 3, and the square root of 9 is 3, and 3 definitely equals 3. So 10 was very truthful, and he actually is a solution to our equation. X equals 5 is bad, so our only solution is x equals to 10. Okay, so again, why it's very important for us to check, because it's possible to have an imposter in the mix. Alright, so let's look at one more crazy. And so I've mentioned a couple times, I believe in the last video, that it's possible to have more than one square root in an equation. So the square root of x minus 3, notice all of that is under the square root, so it stays together, minus the square root of x is equal to 3. Now there's several ways that we can go about solving this. The square root has to be by itself thing goes by kind of out the window, because there's no way in this case to get a square root by itself. You can go ahead and square both sides like this. I find it a little bit easier if I have one square root on one side and the other square root on the other side. You may have to work out a few and see what works best for you. But so that's the way I'm going to do it. So I'm going to take this negative square root of x and I'm going to move it to the other side as a positive square root of x. So I end up with square root of x minus 3 equals 3 plus the square root of x, or the square root of x plus 3. Doesn't matter either way how you want to do it. I'm going to write it like that. And now that I have them separated, I'm going to go ahead and square both sides of my equation. So squared and squared. And so this side's easy. Those cancel out just like they should. So x minus 3. On this side, though, we're going to have to FOIL this out, like we talked about on the last one. And it's not so bad if you think about it. What does this mean? The square root of x plus 3 times the square root of x plus 3. What's nice, when I multiply the square root of x times the square root of x, my square roots get squared, so I end up with just x. Right? It'll cancel out like the other one. Not so lucky on the rest of it. So the square root of x times 3 gives me 3 square roots of x. And now I'm done with the first term, so I'll go to the second. So 3 times the square root of x gives me 3 square roots of x. And then 3 times 3 gives me 9, so plus 9. And I'm going to combine like terms real quick. So x minus 3 equals x plus, I have 3 square roots of x, plus 3 more square roots of x gives me 6 square roots of x plus 9. And now I've kind of whittled my equation down to where I only have one square root. And so I'm going to go ahead and get my one square root all by itself real quick. So I'm going to subtract x, and I'm going to subtract 9. And so that means that my square roots are going to cancel, my x's are going to cancel out. And negative 3 minus 9 gives me negative 12. So my x's cancel. And so I get 6 square roots of x. And 9 minus 9 definitely cancels. So the last thing I need to do to get my square root by itself, divide both sides by 6, divide by 6. And so I end up negative 2 equals the square root of x. So all of that comes down to negative 2 equals the square root of x. And now one more time to get rid of that square root, I'm going to square both sides. And so I end up negative 2 squared again. Be careful with that. A negative squared is always a positive. So I get 4 equals the square root of x squared gives me x. Yes it does. So x equals 4. And so again, I want to check, is it really 4? Is that really a solution? So we're going to plug in x equals 4 to my original equation. Make sure it's not an imposter. So square root of 4 minus 3 minus the square root of 4 equals 3. And so we get the square root of 1 minus the square root of 4 equals 3. The square root of 1 is just 1, minus the square root of 4 is 2, equals 3. And I'm pretty sure that is not true. 1 minus 2 is negative 1. And that definitely does not equal 3. So, again, bad. It is not 4. He is an imposter. So what does that mean? I don't have any other options. So I actually have no solution at all. No solution at all. Okay, so you do have a couple of practice problems. These do need to be worked out in your notes. If you have any questions, work with your partner. Oh, there we go. Make sure y'all see all of them. These right here, practice problems. Work with your partner and email me if y'all really get stuck. Okay, guys, don't forget, check your solutions and have a wonderful day. Bye.